What's up everyone, it's Sprometheus, and today we're gonna bust the top 3 most common espresso myths. So in this video, we'll talk about looking at crema as a way to determine quality, blends being better for espresso than single origins, and that dark roasts make for better espresso. Myth 1, thicker crema is better. First up, let's talk crema. And you know, it's that golden, foamy, frothy layer that sits atop your espresso like Humpty Dumpty on top of his wall, but there's a lot of misconceptions about crema. The biggest misconception is that the more crema, the better the espresso shot. Now, that's not generally true. There are 2 things that affect the amount of crema on your coffee outside of mistakes in preparation, and those 2 things are coffee processing, or the way the bean was processed at origin, and the freshness, i.e. the roast date. The word fresh has become synonymous with good. Everybody wants something that's fresh. Whether it's food or clothes or whatever, fresh is good. But with coffee, it's a little bit different. Coffee needs time to degas. There's a lot of CO2 trapped inside that bean, and after roasting, it takes a little time for that CO2 to start coming out, and that's how the flavors start to really come out of that coffee. If you've ever had coffee straight out of the roaster, next to that same coffee that was roasted a couple days prior, you'd really notice a massive difference. And if you ever get that opportunity, give it a try. It's pretty eye-opening. But the coffee straight from the roaster generally will taste more bitter, more sharp, and it won't have a lot of those flavors that you're probably looking for in your coffee, especially if it's more of a fruity forward or more acidic coffee. But when it comes to freshness, the amount of CO2 inside the coffee really makes a big difference with the amount of crema, because CO2 is the building blocks of crema. Basically, those little tiny bubbles in your crema are CO2 bubbles, and the more CO2, the more crema. So when looking at the difference of crema from coffee that's really fresh or coffee that's had about a week to degas, you can really see a huge difference. After the shot, you can see the crema really begin to break down, with all those larger bubbles being created by the CO2. The week-old coffee has crema that is thinner, but is also smoother and nearly bubble-free. Now, processing comes into play because the other main factor outside of CO2 for creating crema is fats, lipids, and sugars. So washed coffees are, as they're called, washed. So in that process, lots of those fats and sugars are cleaned from the bean, and it doesn't spend as much time in the fruit, so it doesn't have as many of those sugars just inherently in the bean, which creates just a thinner crema in the cup in general. The opposite is true for natural processed coffee, which spends much more of its time inside the fruit, really soaking up lots of those fats and sugars that get washed off pretty quickly in the wash process. So by comparing shots of both processes of the same age, we can really see a pretty significant difference in the level of crema, which doesn't necessarily mean one is better than the other. It just comes down to how they're processed and how fresh they are. So in the end, crema is great and all, even though back in the early days of espresso, it was called coffee scum, but you can't really tell by looking at a shot, seeing how much crema it has, and being able to say that's a good shot of espresso without actually tasting it. Myth 2. Blends make better espresso. Now, the debate on whether blends or single origins make better espresso has kind of taken off quite a bit as the third wave has gone on. A lot of people are in different camps, and they've really drawn their lines in the sand on which one they prefer. And that's really what it comes down to. It's more of a preference. There's no real science or anything I can put behind it that says one is, empirically better than the other, but there are differences between the two. Blends in nature are designed to create a more balanced cup, or take a one-dimensional coffee and make it more complex by adding another coffee to it. For example, taking an extremely bright and acidic wash coffee and mixing it with a softer, smoother, sweeter, natural processed coffee really can create a better cup overall. Or maybe you can take 2 different coffees and use them to create the flavor you want. So you can take a really nutty, chocolatey Brazil, mixing it with a very blueberry forward Ethiopian, and then you have something that tastes essentially like candy. Together, different coffees can create something that's more generally appealing to a much broader audience. Plus, they're generally more forgiving to multiple brew methods and preparations, or if you just like a flavored latte or to add milk and sugar. Yet single origins create a completely different experience. You get only those specific origin characteristics that roaster wants to highlight in that coffee. These tend to be more memorable because they contain flavors that aren't generally associated with a cup of coffee. I still really clearly remember the first time and last time I tasted watermelon clear as day in a shot of espresso. It was an Ethiopian Hambella, and it just kind of blew my mind, and it was one of those experiences that as a coffee lover I'll never forget, and I'm willing to bet that most of these experiences that I've had with single origins, you have too. But that's not to say they're better, they're just different. Myth 3. Espresso is a roast level. At some point in your coffee travels, you've probably come across a coffee bag that said something like espresso roast on it. That generally means it's dark, let's say Italian, French, definitely has oils on the surface, but I'm here to tell you right now that there is no such thing as an espresso roast. Espresso is a brew method, not a roast level. Now, traditionally, dark roasts are seen to make better espresso because in that roast level, it generally minimizes some of that intense acidity that's inherent in coffee and generally kicks up quite a bit when you make espresso with it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but it lands purely in the taste preference category. If you like your coffee with heavier body and those darker, heavier tones of chocolate and caramel, dark roasts are probably your best bet. If you like those sweet, fruit-forward, bright, acidic cups, then light roasts are probably for you. Or if you're like me, split the difference and go with a medium roast. Generally, you'll get some body, some complexity, some of that sweetness, some of that chocolate, but in the end, these are all just preferences, and who am I kidding? We've all got them. Now, let's talk final thoughts. So now as we barrel into the year 2020, I think, it's time for us to let go of some of these long-standing myths about espresso and just kind of embrace the fact that coffee is always changing, it's always evolving, and we just need to be open to what happens next. Even though it feels like in some aspects we're in control, we're kind of just along for the ride, and we should just enjoy it, keep an open mind, and keep drinking good coffee. So with that being said, drop those comments down below, let me know your thoughts on these myths, this video, or just say hi. And a big thank you to my June Patreons, Ads, James B, David, Hamad, Christopher, John K, Squeegee, Roe, Brian, Lisa, Thomas B, Andre, Rick Racer, Sean, Joey, Thomas S, Noel, Spookus, Bound Coffee, Mika, Samantha, Nathan, Aiden, Jonathan, Claire, Steven, James K, Josh, Andrew, Ollie, Ninja Warrior Coffee, Testing 123, Horison, Bobby, Corey C, Curry, Dave B, Jerry, Marcus, Nicholas, Paul, RD, Tim, Matt, Tony, and Zachary, and of course a big thank you to the barista and barback tiers. If you want any information on the Patreon, there's a link in the description and in the upper right hand corner right now. And of course, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Follow my Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week, my blog at Sprometheus.com, my coffee at littlegiant.coffee, and as always, stay caffeinated, Pony Boy.